My name is Patrick Gideon with Innovative Management Solutions, and I'm a Senior Sales Representative. Today we'll have Brad Barth from Hard Dollar joining us, and we're going to review the integration between Primavera and Hard Dollar to show you how your estimates can move into your projects, and then that can give you some earned value information and better reporting than the applications working on their own. A few housekeeping items before we get started. We're going to be answering questions at the end of the webinar. But if you have any questions during the webinar, please send them in using the GoToWebinar panel, which will be typically on the right-hand side of your screen. We'll open the line up during the Q&A portion to answer all additional questions. And also, this webinar is going to be recorded and posted to the IMS website. You will be sent links to that sometime in the next week, so that you can access it and share it with others. That's about all on that. So I'll hand it over to Brad and let him introduce himself real fast.
Yeah, thank you, Patrick. So my name is Brad Barth. My role at Hard Dollar is in product strategy and really helping our customers and potential customers map their requirements to what our product does. And so we're very excited to be here. And Patrick, thanks for having us. We're excited to kind of show you what our integration with Primavera brings to the market.
All right. Well, so we're going to keep this simple. You can see the agenda on the screen. We're going to provide a brief overview of what project cost management means and the terminology that we're using. Brad's going to run through a couple of slides to show you how Hard Dollar and Primavera work together. And then I believe he's going to show a demonstration of the tools working together to get some good reporting information. When we get to the end, we'll open it up for questions, and we'll hear from you all more then. Oh, I forgot the IMS part. Okay, so Innovative Management Solutions. We're a solutions provider for the project management and project controls market. We have offices in Dallas and Houston, Texas, and we provide services all over North America. We've been a Primavera partner for over 18 years. We're involved in the creation of the enterprise application a long time ago, and we help many companies implement the application and learn how to use it and deploy it throughout their organizations. The services we offer are software, training, implementation, staff augmentation. We can host the application. We also are an Oracle partner for business process outsourcing, which is a recent addition to the Oracle bag of tricks. And essentially, it's Primavera in software as a service model. And we're one of 3 partners in North America who can do that. So that's a little bit about IMS. We like working in project controls and helping people see what's going on in their organizations. So I'll let Brad introduce Hard Dollar and get on with the show.
Great, thanks, Patrick. And we're, as I said, excited to be working with IMS. And let's take you through really a rundown, a few slides here on Hard Dollar and what we do and who we do it for, and then we'll spend the bulk of our time in the live product and showing you all the good stuff in action. So this first slide really just talks about, give you a little bit of background on Hard Dollar. We invented the category Project Cost Management, or PCM, back in 2008, and since then we've really been growing quite rapidly and really sort of having carved out that niche. We're finding a lot of customers that are finding a gap between their ERP system or financial system and their scheduling system, and that's a gap that Hard Dollar fills nicely. So you see some of the customers that are currently using the Hard Dollar application all over the world. We are managing our customers, or I should say, are managing a very large volume of projects. We're showing some of the larger customers here, but we have customers that range from a few people to 20,000 employees and up, and everything in between. So what is project cost management? This graphic here kind of shows how we fit into the rest of the world. As I mentioned, scheduling and finance systems, as you can see in blue there, are obviously key to anybody that's project-focused and managing projects. And where hard dollar fits in is the yellow boxes there. So we provide the estimate and the cost model. We also provide the ability to track progress through the project and everything that goes along with that, which we'll get into more detail here. And all the way over to the far left is something that activity that goes on before any of that happens, which typically is a design, maybe some quantity takeoff, and lots of systems out there that do those sorts of things. Our view of project cost management is we have to support all of that data, whether it's coming from our own systems for cost modeling and estimating and progress, or whether it's coming from Primavera, from your financial system, from your design systems. We need to bring all that together and give you visibility to all of that information. Okay, so some of the things we do with that is we help you do cost models for estimates, budgets, feasibility studies, etc. We help you measure progress of the project in terms of everything from earned value to calculating percent completes and roll-ups, as well as forecasts. So what are we expecting cost to come in at? What are we expecting productivity, man hours, et cetera, to come in at? Skipped one slide there. So when we talk about estimating, let's just real quick kind of set the stage. Lots of ways to develop estimates. Hard dollar, our legacy is in estimating. We started there 20 years ago, and we pretty much have the book on that in terms of supporting just about every way you can think of to do estimates. So whether it's using historical data, whether it's using templates, whether you're doing bottom-up estimates, conceptual estimates, whether you want to incorporate third-party price books, as you can see here, RS Means, Richardson's, et cetera, quotes from subs and suppliers, all of those data sources can be leveraged in hard dollar in order to create a cost model and ultimately take that into an estimate of any level of accuracy. When we get into scheduling, we integrate with Primavera. We were really raised the bar back in 2006 in terms of creating a dynamic two-way integration with Primavera. We did that because there's a lot of things that, if you're going to create a true cost model, there's a lot of things that you need to know about the schedule of the project in order to develop a true model of the cost. So we wanted to, and recognizing that that process is iterative, we might get you ask the question, what comes first, the estimate or the schedule? You get different answers, but oftentimes you hear, well, they kind of both happen simultaneously, and as you advance one of them, then the other advances, and they continue to advance each other. So we've created this very dynamic, it's really a synchronization between the schedule and our cost model to make it easy to do some of the things you're seeing there on the right. We can create, for example, if you've done an estimate, you want to create a schedule from that, it's basically the push of a button. If you've already got a schedule and you want to drive that into an estimate, again, with a single click, you can do that. We can resource and cost load schedules from estimates. We can utilize the same structure within the two, estimate and schedule, or let them have their own structures. We often get the question, well, sometimes our schedules have more or less detail than our estimates. So we do have the ability to split and roll up and do those one-to-one or one-to-many mappings. And then we can also keep percent completes in sync, as if you're using hard dollar and a timesheet system, for example, to record progress, we can pass those percent completes automatically into Primavera. If you think about hard dollar and Primavera, we both work off of a tree structure or a hierarchy, and there's a really nice mapping. We approach projects very similarly. So from a cost perspective, resources, activities, and all the way up through the WBS, you can see there's a nice overlap there. really the only difference is what we call a cost breakdown structure. Primavera calls a work breakdown structure. We call it a cost breakdown structure, or CBS, just because there are often things in the cost model or in the budget that you won't find in the schedule, things like contingencies and overheads and those things that do contribute costs but are not really part of the work itself. Now, as far as getting information in, as we start getting into the progress side, and you can see here lots of ways to get progress into hard dollars. We're moved past the estimating stage. We're into tracking progress. We can do that by entering progress directly into hard dollar. So by that I mean actual quantities, actual man hours, etc. You might use a spreadsheet to get that information. You can feed that into hard dollar. You might have a timesheet system that you want to use to feed that information into hard dollar, or your ERP system, your financial system. You can see some of them that we work with over on the right. And this whole slide here is really the topic of, we have a webinar coming up on July 26th to talk about how to bring all of this stuff together. So really in that webinar, we'll focus more on hard dollar, Primavera, and ERP all working together. Okay, a couple more slides here, and then we'll jump into the live product. We do have, hard dollar does provide a very dynamic, very graphical web reporting capability, so you can create dashboards, KPIs, any sort of reports, graphs, charts that are mashing up, if you will, the hard dollar data along with the Primavera data, so you can get things like CPI graphs, SPI graphs, cost versus budgets, forecasts. All that type of information can be reported and made available to your viewers, folks that need to be able to access that information on the fly. Instead of sending reports back and forth through email, we have the ability to create a self-service web reporting. So who uses hard dollar? You kind of see, looking around this wheel, the types of folks that are typically using hard dollar. Mostly on the left side there you see estimators and anybody involved in project controls. So project managers, schedulers, cost engineers, analysts, etc. And then we do have sort of secondary use by folks like controllers who might be looking at maybe resource needs across projects and procurement. What do we need to order? A lot of that information, if you trace it back, it all starts in the estimate, starts in the cost model. Okay, so a lot of different kinds of people, a lot of different roles of people that are using the hard dollar application. And lastly here, we do, one of the things that we do is we bring owners and contractors together. So there's, we have part of our benefit is that we can make it easy to share information. So as we have contractors and owners using the same platform, it's easy to share information. It's easy to share estimates. It's easy to deal with changes. Easier to deal with progress payments, earned values, all those types of things. And recognizing that the bulk of the cost of a project happens after the estimate is done. If you looked at that as a graph, everything spikes when you get into the execution stage, and a lot of that time, we recognize is pulling together reports, whether it's cost to budget reports, whether it's forecast reports, status reports. A lot of the cost, let's say the overhead cost of a project, is focused around reporting, and so part of our integration with Primavera is to make that easy, to bring all that data together, to simplify that reporting process. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump into the live product now and go through some scenarios. And we'll talk about some use cases that the integration facilitates. And let me just close down a few things here. So, one of those things is the ability, as we talked about, to create a schedule from an estimate, or vice versa. Okay, here you see, inside of the hard dollar application, we're looking at a particular project, and you can kind of see the structure of it over to the left. And what we have there is is a tree structure. So if we were to open up the civil section, you'll see we've got the next layer down there, caps, concrete, excavation. If we were to break out, open that up, I should say, then we have another level. So if you're familiar with Primavera, it's a very similar structure in terms of, it's just a hierarchy. Everything kind of rolls up to the top. You can keep breaking things down as to whatever level of detail you want. And so as you can imagine, if we had a Primavera schedule already that had this breakdown structure for it in the project, we could very simply create a new project right in here by pointing to an existing Primavera schedule. Okay, so we can drive basically everything you see on the screen here by pointing to a Primavera schedule that can load up this whole structure for us. And from then on, as we put things into the estimate, they can flow into the schedule and vice versa. Okay, probably the more common scenario that we see is folks using hard dollar to create the estimate initially, perhaps doing the quantity takeoff, working through at least a preliminary estimate to the point where we've got some costs, as you can see here, and then using that to go the other direction. Let's use that to create the initial schedule in Primavera using the same structure, okay, and then perhaps refining that structure once we get into Primavera. So this whole structure from the hard dollar side can go into Primavera and create the schedule. Okay, but regardless of which one comes first, the beauty of this is that they are in sync. So this schedule icon right here is going to give us the ability to keep the two current. We can update at any point with a click. We can update the Primavera schedule, or with another click, update hard dollar from any changes we made to Primavera. This particular view we're looking at, as you can see the structure of these various scope items, we've turned on a few columns. Much like Primavera, hard dollar gives you the ability to control. You can choose from hundreds of columns that you want to use in your view. So here we've just got a few columns turned on. You can see, for example, this scheduled column. Which of these things do we want to show in the schedule? Which of these scope items are actually linked to Primavera? Okay, so if it's something like a contingency, although it adds cost, it's not putting a bar into the schedule, so it's unchecked. As I mentioned, different roll-up options. Here's our estimated durations. We also have what we call a plug duration, so you can show different durations in the schedule than those durations around which you've based your costs, okay, or they can be the same. A lot of different options. Many more than what I'm showing on the screen here in terms of how we control what goes back and forth between Primavera and hard dollar. One of the major use cases, though, for this integration is, if you think about any estimate or any cost model, there are going to be things in there that are, if not everything in there, as a function of the schedule. So some very simple things that we'll focus in on, for example, at the top you see escalation. You see job management. If we go into escalation in our cost model in hard dollar, you're going to see a standard table that we're putting into all of our estimates as a user. We're saying, hey, any work that happens in 2013 is going to be escalated, right? And if we get into 2014, it's going to be escalated. So if you look at this 2013 escalation, we've come over to the right and we've said we're going to escalate everything by 10%. Anything that happens in 2013, we're going to escalate the labor cost 10%, the equipment cost 10%. You can set those separately. I've just put them all to 10%. As we get into 2014, you can see they're all 15%. Okay, but right now there's no work going on in 2014, so there's no escalation dollars in there. So the question is, how do we know that? How does hard dollar know there's no work going on in 2014? And obviously the answer is the Primavera schedule tells us that. Okay, so Primavera gives us visibility to when the work is happening, and therefore our cost model can take that into account. And you'll see as we start making some changes, if our schedule gets pushed, more work will move into 2013 and into 2014, and those escalation values will be triggered. Okay, likewise, if we look at job management, in our cost model, we may or may not want to borrow the schedule for that, but in either case, we've got things like engineers, project managers, maybe supervisors, secretaries, etc., that maybe we want, we know how much they cost us on a unit cost basis or an hourly basis or a monthly basis, but we need to know how long they're going to be working. Right? So in this case, we're going to show you an example of where those work hours, in this case 3,300 work hours or 416 days, that is coming back into hard dollar from Primavera. So as the schedule gets longer or shorter, back here in our cost model in the estimate, our hours for our engineers and project managers are going to go up or down accordingly. We don't have to worry about it. Okay, so as you can imagine, going through the constant changes, as you change the estimate, well, then we got to go change the schedule. We change the schedule, then we got to go change the estimate. Every time there's a design change, every time there's an assumption change. The beauty of this integration is that you only have to make those changes once, and they go into Primavera or from Primavera back to hard dollar. Okay, so let's take a look at the Primavera schedule that's linked to this particular project. So if I go into Primavera, now normally if you had a good sized screen or if you have two screens, you can have hard dollar up on one half and Primavera up on the other half and see them both at the same time. I'm going to just toggle back and forth between them here to use our screen. Okay, but here's the schedule for this particular project, and you can see the costs are in there. So hard dollar loaded the Primavera schedule with all of these costs, and if we were to drill down into an item, let's say fine grade, you will see in the resources section that hard dollar also resource loaded the schedule. Okay, so all of these work hours came in from the hard dollar estimate. Okay, so if we make a change to to the estimate, maybe use a different group of resources to do this fine grading, those will flow into Primavera automatically. We don't have to worry about manually resource loading the schedule. Okay, so let's do some changes now. Let's make some changes in Primavera, push those back to hard dollar, and then let's go the other direction. Okay, so right now you can see this project is, it looks like it's starting around January 2nd. It's about 416 days total. Okay, let's make some changes to both of those things. Let's affect the total duration, and we'll affect the start date, and then go back into hard dollar and see how that impacted some of those costs. Okay, so let's say, let's take this first actual work activity here, this structural steel, and let's just move it down. We'll take it and we'll move it maybe down 6 months or so. So we'll move it maybe into this second half of 2012. We'll put a constraint on it, and then we'll go ahead and update our schedule. So everything is going to be moved accordingly. So remember our setup for this. So now that we've moved that work down, more of that work is going to happen in 2013. And in fact, let's move it a little bit more so we can get some of it to move into 2014. All right, let's move it over. Put the constraint on that and update. Okay, Primavera has nicely moved everything for us. So now you can see we've got some work extending into 2014. And that's important because we have escalators that we want to trigger from our cost standpoint. Let's do some other things that maybe lengthen the schedule. It's still 416 days, but let's maybe we'll take, you can see a lot of this earthwork, a lot of it's happening, looks like with start to start connections with a little bit of lag. Let's make some of these finish to start connections, and that way we'll lengthen out the schedule, make it a little bit longer. Maybe we can't do those things as simultaneously as we had hoped. Right, so we'll make a few of these things finish to start instead of start to start. Okay, so let's update our schedule now. So now we're up to 589 days in our schedule. So back in hard dollar, if I come back over into hard dollar, I don't have to go figure out, how did those changes affect my escalation values, and how did those changes affect how long I need my superintendents and project managers, right? You can see the dollar values for those things right now, about 350,000 and 575,000. All I've got to do now when I'm ready is just update hard dollar from Primavera. It gives me some options here, but I'm going to go ahead and update the estimate to stay in sync. And it's going to go through and check and see what's changed. Okay, so since the last time I did that sync, it's going to go through and check to see what needs to be changed. I don't have to remember every change. I don't have to make sticky notes to remind myself to go back into hard dollar. You can see, since we did change the schedule, start date, really all the items are changing. All their start and finish dates are changing, right? But all I had to do was click the button and sit back and let the system deal with the changes. And when that's done, it's going to recalculate the cost model on the hard dollar side, and we're going to see new values in there for our escalation, for our project management. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go the other direction, and we'll make some changes going from hard dollar to Primavera. Okay, so you can see, a lot of changes that are going on here. That recalc of the cost model. And we can actually work along even though that update is still happening. Just let that finish. Still doing the updates behind the scenes here. Okay, so once we've got that updated now, you can see what's happened here. If you look at our escalation value, it's up to $703,000, and our job management is up to $814,000, right? And that's based on the fact that if we drill into escalation, you're going to see there that now, remember that before we didn't have any escalation happening in 2014, but now that the Primavera schedule tells us, hey, there's work going on in 14, and some escalation values are kicking in. Okay, likewise for that job management and equipment, if we were to open that up, we're going to see, hey, there's 4,700 hours of those folks that are needed now because the schedule got longer compared to what we had in there before. Okay, but you can see it's a dynamic model. I don't have to remember to make all those changes. Everything stays in sync. Now let's go the other direction. Let's make some changes on the hard dollar side and see how those impact our, or can impact our Primavera schedule. Maybe now that the project has been pushed back, maybe we're into, maybe this earthwork, we're into a particular season. Maybe it's the rainy season when that work is going on, or it's winter. And so our production assumptions that we made for those earthwork items, let's just take the first two items there. Maybe we need to change those assumptions. Right, so I'm going to highlight those two items, and this is a typical use case in hard dollar. I'm going to open those up. And what we're going to do is we're going to apply a factor. If we look at the productivity assumptions, you can see that we were planning on doing for the fine grading 400 square feet per day. Maybe we want to apply a factor here. Maybe we're going to need twice as many man hours per day. So I'm just going to apply. You can have lots of factors. Call those factors whatever you want. I'm just going to use a generic factor of 2. Okay, and then I'm going to go to that next, or actually let's go to the previous one there, the machine excavation. We'll do the same thing. We'll put a factor of 2 on it. Okay, so what we've done is we've assumed that our productivity is going to be essentially, we're going to take twice as many man hours as we had expected. Right, well, obviously that drives our cost up, that drives the duration up. It's going to take longer to do that work. Okay, so back on the hard dollar side, by applying those factors, those durations have now increased. Okay, so you can see those estimated days right there are now basically twice what they were before. You can see right next door, they used to be 69 and 104 days. Now, because of those factors, they're twice as much. Okay, so again, I don't have to remember to go into Primavera to make those changes. When I'm ready, I can simply go up here and say, okay, let's go ahead and update the Primavera schedule from hard dollar. You know what, before I do that, let's just add a new item in here. Maybe we'll add some new scope in here. We'll just call it new scope. Okay, and you can see it inherited its properties. It's going to be in the schedule. There'll be a bar for it. So when I update Primavera, you're going to see that new item in the WBS because of the rules we've defined. So let's go ahead and update Primavera. It knows the kinds of things that we want to update. At this point, I don't need to update my actuals or my resources. It's always going to update the WBS and keep those in sync. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so at this point, it's going the other direction. It's checking to see what's changed on the hard dollar side let's push that information into Primavera and update anything accordingly. So now if we go back to the Primavera schedule and update, or refresh I should say, okay, now look what it's done for us. Okay, so it's added this new scope. That new item we added in hard dollar showed up in the schedule. I can link it in wherever it needs to be linked. My machine excavation and my fine grading have those new durations, so those bars got twice as long as they were before. Right? And all of that pushes up to give us a new total duration. Everything's linked together, right? So now my job management and equipment duration is going to be longer. My escalations might go up because now the overall schedule is longer. Okay, so those are the types of circular, iterative changes that that happen in the real world as we add new scope. That changes the schedule. Changing the schedule affects our costs, and we go around that loop until we've got our estimate and our schedule done. Now, if we go into, if we come back to hard dollar, if you look at the start and finish dates for all of these items, if we go back into hard dollar, and we'll scroll over a little bit here. Actually, let's just, if I drill into any particular item, let's take machine excavation. We can turn on columns for the information I'm about to show you, or we can drill into that item. Here's a nice little schedule tab here where we can see for this item, this machine excavation, here's all the dates we brought back from Primavera. Okay, so the scheduled start and finish dates, early start, late start, those all came back in from Primavera. And so we can use that information to help drive lots of things. So one of those things is cash flow. If we go and look at a cash flow graph, hard dollar is giving us visibility now to what does our cost look like, which is the red dotted line on that curve, on that graph I should say, and the green dotted line is our revenue. So one of the things we hear quite often, especially from the contractor or consultant, engineer, EPC community, is can we model not only cost, but can we model revenue as well? And with hard dollar and Primavera working together, the answer is yes. So, and you can see in this case, the costs are ramping up as you would expect over time based on our schedule and our estimate. And then the green line, the revenue, is actually based on typical scenario in terms of there's milestones that drive our revenue. Right? There's payment schedules, so we get a payment up front. Maybe there's another payment tied to an activity, and that activity is not happening until way over here. Right? So we don't get our next payment until it looks like about 6 months. And then it looks like we get a big chunk of revenue coming in very quickly, and then it levels off as we finish out the work. So the schedule, we can tie cost and revenue to various bars on the schedule, and as that schedule moves around, these lines are going to update. Right now, we're looking at this based on, let's say, earned values. In other words, when does the work occur? If we graph it, we could also graph it based on what we call cash values. Okay, so if we look at it based on cash, that is going to reflect delays in terms of if we're the contractor, how long does it take us to submit our bills? How long does it take to get paid? Okay, so you can see in this case, even though we end up where we want to be, the green line's above the red line, there's a pretty significant period of time in here where our costs that we're expending are actually exceeding the revenue we have, the income we have on this project. Okay, so these, this is the kind of thing that, in the course of preparing an estimate, preparing a budget, preparing a schedule, you can optimize these things by looking at, hey, how do we eliminate that period where our revenue is substantially below our costs? We can do that by changing the schedule. We can do that by changing the payment milestones. We can do that by changing our costs, perhaps moving money around in different areas of the project. Right, lots of approaches to deal with that issue. But hard dollar, you can see, is giving you visibility to it, and as we address the issue, we'll see it very clearly. Okay, so if we look at those timing options, you can see here as we look at it either from the owner's or the contractor's perspective, you know, when are pay requests being made? Every 30 days. How long does it take to process those payments? 30 days in this case. 10% is being held for retainage. Okay, when do we get that retainage? Or when, if we're the owner, when do we pay the retainage? Costs coming in from contractors and subs and vendors. When do we pay them? We're saying, in this case, it takes 90 days to process those. And we can even deal with interest rates on shortages and surpluses and factor those in and calculate finance costs even. Okay, so all of those things affect that cash flow graph that we were just looking at. Okay, so what about resources? I mentioned that we do resource load the schedules in Primavera. And by bringing those start and finish dates back into hard dollar, we can do things like, well, let's take a look at our resource utilization over time. Okay, so we could go in, for example, and say, let's turn on our resource utilization and see, maybe we'll just look at it at a high level by resource type. Let's look at our labor hours, and we'll graph those. We'll just use this kind of goldish brown color. We'll graph those as a bar. And let's see what that looks like. Okay, so now we can see our labor hours over time. And again, this is another thing where if we want to really work on leveling out these resources where we don't spike up and then have these valleys and peaks, right? We can try to level those off. Something obviously Primavera is very good at. Okay, but based on our assumptions in the estimate in terms of what assemblies, what crews, what resources are going to do all of the work, right? We had to do that in order to come up with our cost estimate. Now that Primavera has given us the start and finish dates, we can very easily give you visibility into what does that look like. When are those resources needed, either looking at one project or looking at cross projects. Okay, so here we're looking at labor hours. The scale is over on the right. So we can see, and we're looking at this by month right now. We could graph it by day, by week, however frequently we want to do it. But we can see, for example, in the month of December, we've got 7,100 labor hours in there. If we wanted to drill down further, we could go in and see, maybe we want to look at it down at the resource description level. Let's drill down to maybe, you know, when do we need carpenters? And when do we need Boilermakers? Maybe we'll give those two different colors. Okay, so we can see now our gray bar is our carpenter hours by month, and then we can see those Boilermaker hours kicking in towards the end, okay, in blue. One last thing that I want to show you that can affect, that's a really nice feature in hard dollar that can help you affect the timing of these graphs is what we call period quantities. Okay, so we can look at, you know, if we look at, let's say, that machine excavation, if we drill into that item, you can see there's a pretty large quantity on that. 52,000 cubic yards is the assumption of the scope of that work. Well, how does hard dollar know how that's going to flow? If Primavera gives us the start and finish date, you can see it there, August 28th to December 3rd. Well, is that going to happen, you know, a little bit every day? Is it going to happen, you know, we're going to kind of ramp up and ramp down? So we can use the cost curves you're familiar with in Primavera, or you can create your own cost curves on the hard dollar side. Okay, so you can use our predefined curves, or you can create your own custom curve and define how that spread is going to happen. Or even better, you can go into what we call period quantities. Okay, so period quantities allows you to take that 52,000 cubic yards and spread it across that period that is coming back from Primavera starting on August 28th. Okay, so we know when it's supposed to start, we know when it's supposed to finish, and we can look at this right now. We're doing it by day. We could do it by week, by month, by quarter, by year, depending on how fine a point we want to put on it. But now we could go in and spread by percentage or by quantity. So we could say, maybe 1,000 of those units are going to happen on the first day, and then the next day, it's going to be 1,200. So you can get to that level of detail, or you can do it by percentage. Right? Maybe we want to say, 5% is going to happen in the first day, or the first month, or the first whatever it is, and then it's going to go up to 10%. Right, so this gives you a lot of control. Obviously, you're not going to do this on every single line item in the cost model. Okay, but for the high dollar things, the large quantity things, the old 80% rule, the things that are driving 80% of the value of the project, you might want to get more granular in terms of how do we think that work's going to go, right? And therefore, that will impact that cash flow that we're looking at, right? So if we spread an item equally, you're going to see a linear curve on it. If we ramp it up, you'll see that curve more of an accelerated curve, like we see over here on the far right. Okay, so lots of control over really the timing of things. I really think what we're doing here is a best of breed approach using Primavera and hard dollar strengths to their advantages. And as Patrick mentioned, the end result of that is that we can provide a solution that is better than either system can do by itself. And the biggest benefit, again, is we've made that integration as simple and seamless as possible. You don't have to import, export, copy and paste. It's just a matter of defining the rules and then choosing, which do we want to update. When we're ready to update the schedule, we do that. When we're ready to update the estimate, we can do that. All right. So at this point, let's turn it back to the slide deck, and we'll turn it back over to Patrick to talk about some next steps, some actions, potential action items, and then I believe we'll open it up for questions. So Patrick, over to you.
Okay, I don't see that. There it is. All right, so the next steps in this is, if you all would like a copy of this, we're going to email it out so you can see it. But for more information about hard dollar, IMS, or Primavera, you can contact IMS at 866-799-7800 or email us at sales@ims-web.com. Either way, if you call in, you can ask for me, and the call will be routed to me. But any of our sales professionals can help you. Let's see. Looks like there's a link you can click that'll get you to hard dollar, and we can set up a custom demo for you using some of your data and reviewing your information. It makes a lot more sense when you're seeing your data in there than somebody else's. The other upcoming event is we're going to have another webinar on July 26th called The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly of Project Cost Data. So look for that invitation, or if it's something that you know you want to be invited to, send us an email and we'll ensure you're on the list. So that's the sales part. Let's open this up for questions, and if there's anything we can do or any questions you have, please let us know, and Brad and I'll
muted.
Okay, do we have any questions? Okay, I don't hear any questions, so if nobody has anything, then I guess we can go ahead and end the webinar. Did any comments or anything else? Okay, well, you all have a good afternoon. If something does come up, then please let. Oh, I'm seeing some things in my screen, so I don't know if someone has a question or not. Amanda,
can you hear me, Patrick?
I can hear now. Yes.
Yeah, it looked like we did have a question that came in terms of what is the cost of HD, and maybe we can just relate it to the cost of Primavera if folks are familiar with that already, or maybe just provide some ranges. But
yeah, go ahead. I'm not entirely familiar with all of it. I know that it's very comparable to Primavera as far as licensing goes.
Yeah, and I think if folks just kind of want a general range or a ballpark, I mean that there are a few different slices to it in terms of, do you want just the estimating side, do you want the progress side, do you want both? Obviously, the folks here would be interested in the Primavera integration. That's a separate module, but typically, you're looking at in the neighborhood of let's say $2,000 to $10,000 for a user, depending on what those users are going to need to do. And again, I think it's very complementary to the price of Primavera if you're familiar with that.
And Patrick can get back with you if you have a specific request. And it does look like we had one other question. It said, are there activity IDs in Primavera associated with costs in HD?
Yeah, so the question was, are there activity IDs associated with IDs in hard dollar? Yep. So that is part of the configuration. When you set up the rules, you can define. We have a field on the hard dollar side called Schedule ID, which is generally used to store the ID or reference number that the scheduling system uses. So it could be an activity ID, it could be a user-defined field or a tag. So absolutely, we can drive those activity IDs from hard dollar into Primavera, or we can bring them from Primavera back into hard dollar for reference. And then and building on that a little bit, we can even map, all of our user-defined fields and tags on the hard dollar side can be mapped into user-defined fields on the Primavera side. Again, so you have all the same sorting fields and fields available for filtering and grouping and things like that.
And then, Brad, I believe you all integrate with the financial systems as well to validate and bring in costs from there too, don't you?
Yes, absolutely, and that's a big part as we get into the progress side and doing forecasts and things like that. We can integrate with all the major financial systems so that we can bring back actual costs into hard dollar, and that allows you to really do a full. We can give you full visibility into your budgeted costs, obviously, but in addition, we can show you your actual costs. We can calculate earned values for you. And then we have a very robust forecasting system. So once we know, what's our progress to date, what's our cost to date, we can use that information as well as all the assumptions that were put into the estimates to drive forecasts. Right? And then we can give you graphs, charts, reports of all of those information sets combined. What is our, how do our actuals compare to our budget? How does our forecast compare to either one of those? And then what do our earned values look like?
And the combination of those three systems, your financials, the Primavera, and then finally hard dollar, bringing everything together, including the estimate, gives you earned value reporting that I have seldom seen. It's so easy to get that information and so easy to manage. So that's really nice, and that is the true value of these tools when they're working together.
So I just noticed that everybody was muted on the line. I've unmuted the line for any of the attendees, Candy, David, Harold, or Will or William. If you had any questions, you could submit them either in the question pane, or if you wanted to, we've opened up the line. You should have received an audio pin. I just need #59#. If you had any additional questions.
I have no other question. Thank you very much. This is Willie.
Okay, so what can we help you with? What would you like to know more about?
Zachary here. We have a quick question. The integration between Primavera and hard dollar, where is it happening on your demo? It's on the IMS side, or it's some kind of a hybrid between hard dollar and IMS, or how that works?
Yeah, the integration is actually between hard dollar and Primavera. It's part of the integration is actually provided by hard dollar, and you install it on your server, and you basically point it to your Primavera instance. It works through the Primavera API. Okay, so we don't do anything that's non-standard. We work through the standard Primavera API. IMS is obviously an expert in Primavera. They can assist with getting both hard dollar and Primavera deployed and configured and help you get the most out of both of those systems.
All right. Do we have any other questions or comments? Well, I thank you all for participating today. If there is anything else, please reach out to us. We'll be happy to address it.
Wait, I think we might have one question coming in.
Okay.
Okay. No, it was just thank you for your time, and it was just had a question that was answered when Brad was speaking. So thank you everyone for your time, and Patrick and folks from Innovative Management Solutions will be following up with you to move forward, and we also look forward to seeing you attend the Good, the Bad, the Ugly of Project Cost Data on the 26th. And you'll get an email invitation from IMS for that. Thank you.
All right. Thank you all. I'll talk to you later.